I just collapsed to the floor.
This is how Cleopatra Bernard felt the moment the phone rang, because somebody on the other end was screaming this.
X got shot, bro. I think X got shot, bro. I think X got shot, bro. I think X got shot.
Her son had been shot outside a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida. She got in the car, she drove, and she could not figure out where she was going.
I was like disoriented. I got there was a few people there already. I'm not sure how they found out. And I was just in there for mad long, pacing back and forth.
She was lost, completely lost, somewhere on a Florida highway with no idea how to reach the place where her 20-year-old son was bleeding out on a table.
Police are now investigating the death of a popular rapper in Deerfield Beach, where he was shot and killed, and Riel, it appears two men might have been trying to rob him.
A growing memorial for rapper XXXTentacion outside the Deerfield Beach motorcycle dealership where he was gunned down in broad daylight. The 20-year-old from Plain was Jase Onfroy, was leaving Reba Motorsport when he was shot. According to the Broward Sheriff's Office, the suspects fled in a dark-colored SUV. Chopper 4 was over the scene off North Dixie Highway and Northeast 36th Street as the investigation unfolded. The popular rapper was rushed to Broward Health North, where he was pronounced dead.
Then, 8 years after that phone call, Cleopatra Bernard controls a fortune exceeding $100 million, lives in a 15,000 square foot mansion her dead son picked out for her, and has fought more lawsuits than most corporate executives see in a lifetime. And depending on who you ask, she is either the most devoted mother in hip-hop or the most calculating one. On April 6, 2023, 3 men stood in a Broward County courtroom and heard the words that would define every remaining day of their lives. Judge Michael A. Usen sentenced Michael Boatwright to 2 consecutive life terms without any possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years. Dedrick Williams and Trayvon Newsom each received mandatory life sentences without parole. Nobody in that courtroom flinched. The evidence had been overwhelming, the verdict unanimous, and the sentencing was the only possible outcome under Florida law. But something happened at the verdict reading that most people do not talk about enough. After the jury pronounced all 3 men guilty of first-degree murder and armed robbery, Michael Boatwright turned toward the family of the young man he had shot to death and blew them a kiss. He looked directly at Cleopatra Bernard, the mother of the 20-year-old he had executed at point-blank range over $50,000 in a Louis Vuitton bag, and he blew her a kiss. I want you to imagine being her in that moment. You have spent 5 years waiting for this trial. You have buried your son. You have fought his baby mother in court. You have been accused by your own stepdaughter of orchestrating the murder. You have been sued by your dead son's half-brother for $11 million. You have watched strangers on the internet call you a fraud, a thief, a liar. And now the man who pulled the trigger is blowing you a kiss from the defense table. Solomon Sobande, Jase's manager, read the family statement at sentencing. He said they would never recover from this loss. They would never see Jase live to his full potential. They would never watch him grow old. They would never watch him be a father. Then came the sentencing that made people genuinely angry. Robert Allen, the 4th man involved in the robbery, had pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and testified against the other 3. On May 17th, he received 7 years. With time already served during the lengthy trial process, he would spend approximately 2 years behind actual bars before walking out on 20 years of probation.
It was sentencing day for the 4th man convicted in the murder of rapper XXXTentacion. Robert Allen was sentenced to 7 years in prison with credit for 5 years already served at the Broward County Jail as part of a plea deal. Allen pleaded guilty last year and testified against the 3 other men arrested in connection with the crime. After serving his time, he will spend 20 years of probation.
2 years for participating in the armed robbery and murder of a 20-year-old kid. Jase's aunt, Deandra Ellis, told the court the family was content with the sentencing. She said every day is just another day that he is missing. And that sentence, if you really listen to it, tells you more about grief than any documentary ever could. Every day is just another day that he is missing. While those 3 men were being told they would die in prison, the woman sitting in the gallery was already running an empire that some estimates now value at over $100 million. And the story of how she got there is not the clean, inspirational narrative that anyone wants it to be. Most people know the basic facts of how XXXTentacion died, but almost nobody knows what happened the night before. Cleopatra sat down on the GG33 podcast with host Garrett and revealed something that has never been widely reported.
Crazy shit that nobody knows. The day before he died, that night he went to Walmart by himself and bought a shitload of white candles. Left them in the house by the fireplace. Those were the candles that we ended up using for his candlelight visual 3 days later. I swear to God, I can't make it up. We actually have...
How many candles?
I don't remember the number, but it was a lot. It was a lot.
He bought... Did he
white
ever
candles.
do anything like that before?
Never.
So he bought a whole bunch of candles.
Candles, white candles.
The day before he died.
The night he bought it that night, he died the following day.
He brought them home and left them by the fireplace. 3 days later, those exact candles were used at his candlelight vigil. That same week, he asked her to do something else too.
He wanted me to paint his nails black that week, but I had to go to LA, so I didn't get to do it. He also said he wanted me to find him a monk. He was like, I want you to find me a monk. I'm like, a fucking monk for what? He was just, I want a monk.
Why did he paint his nails black?
I don't know. I have no idea. And then he had a conversation with his aunt.
White candles and black nails.
Yeah.
Her response on the podcast was immediate and unfiltered. She said she told him a monk for what? Then he had a conversation with his aunt where he casually mentioned that if he ever passed away, he did not want to be cremated and he did not want to be buried. He ended up in a mausoleum, placed in the wall, on water, facing east where the sun rises every morning. And this is where the story starts to feel different than any other rapper's murder you have ever heard about. Because Cleopatra told Garrett on that podcast that Jahseh had been telling her for years, repeatedly, to her face and to other people, that he was not going to make it to 21. She said it infuriated her because he believed deeply in manifesting and the power of spoken words. She would tell him he was contradicting everything he claimed to believe in. If you say words have power, why are you speaking death over yourself? His answer was always the same. He was not just saying it, he knew. 6 months before his death, he went on Instagram Live and told his followers that if he died or was ever sacrificed, he wanted his life to have meant something to at least 5 million young people. 7 months before his death, at 19 years old, he sat down and signed a formal last will and testament. He also established a trust to hold every asset he owned. A teenager who had been famous for barely a year had already written his will. And that will contained a distribution that would detonate a series of wars across his entire family. 50% to his mother, Cleopatra Bernard, 25% to his full brother, Aiden Kerr, 25% to Corey Pack. The name that was nowhere in the document was the woman carrying his unborn child. Genesis Sanchez was not mentioned at all. And that missing name is where the real story of Cleopatra Bernard's $100 million empire begins. Because the absence of Genesis from that will created a vacuum that Cleopatra would fill in ways that turned her into the most polarizing mother in hip-hop. Garrett asked Cleopatra on the podcast whether she could control her son. She did not hesitate. She said no. And then she explained something that most interviewers would have glossed over. She said Jahseh believed they had reversed roles in this lifetime. He believed he had been her father in a previous life, and that he was here to guide her rather than the other way around. He told her that starting from around 15 years old on multiple occasions.
He felt like he was your father in
He
your
felt
life?
like he was my father in my
And
last life.
he felt that he was here to guide you instead of the other way around?
I don't know what he thought in this life, but he feels like he was my dad in our past life. He's said that on multiple occasions.
How old was the first time when you said that?
Oh, what was he, like 15? I actually have a video on my Instagram of him talking about school, and when he first started being conscious as a kid, saying, "Oh my God, fuck, I'm back in this realm." It's on my Instagram right now.
He said that?
He said, I'm back in this realm, and he talked about, being in the school and being in the system and stuff like that.
Most people would dismiss that as teenage ego, and Cleopatra admitted she dismissed it too. She was raised in a Catholic home in Jamaica. Her mother, Colette Jones, had raised her alone in poverty so severe that Cleopatra never finished high school. She worked as a model, then a hotel manager, then a homemaking supervisor. She relocated to South Florida, married Dwayne Ricardo Onfro, had 2 sons, watched the marriage collapse, and raised both boys on her own. When Jase started pushing her to study numerology and astrology, she shut it down. She told Garrett she was always dismissive, that she grew up Catholic and that was all she wanted to hear. Jase would tell her things like, "You have no idea who you are. You do not even understand the power you have." She looked at him like he was out of his mind. And the kid who was saying all of this was also the same kid who at 6 years old tried to stab a man who was attacking his mother inside their home. Think about that pairing for a second. A boy violent enough to pick up a weapon at 6 and spiritual enough to talk about past lives at 15. That is the same person. And he was not pretending in either direction. By 13, he was giving Cleopatra serious problems. Fights, juvenile detention, police involvement that she described on the podcast by saying she would scream and curse at him in Jamaican patois, and it made absolutely no difference. He was going to do what he was going to do regardless. But then she shared something on that same podcast that reframes everything you think you know about him. She said he was not materialistic at all.
She did a lot of shit behind the scenes that he never publicized.
Was he materialistic?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's the craziest thing.
He didn't care about money, no?
Never. He would wear Toms, I think they're called. Wear the same clothes 2-3 times for the day, like 3 days in a row. Never really cared about jewelry or anything like that.
So he would never be the Rolexes?
None of that shit. In fact, the necklace that he had on that day that they tried to rob him, I gifted him that necklace.
She said he never cared about jewelry or watches. The gold necklace he was wearing the day he was robbed and murdered, the one the killers demanded along with the $50,000, Cleopatra had gifted him that chain because she felt like he needed to look like the star he was. She bought it for him because he would never have bought it for himself. And the first tattoo he ever got, at 15 years old, done by his own hand because she refused to give him permission, was the word Cleopatra across his chest. It was crooked and messy because he did it himself. She was furious, but the word he chose to permanently mark onto his body before anything else in his life was his mother's name. She said he was a mama's boy. She said she never got to dance with him. She said she never got to collect awards with him. She said those are the things she missed out on and cannot get back. And she said all of this while sitting inside the 15,000 square foot Parkland mansion that Jase had picked out for her before he died. 6 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, grand foyer with a sweeping staircase, home theater, full smart home system. He put the deed in her name. He wanted the woman who raised him on hotel management wages to have a home that matched everything she had sacrificed. He never got to see her move in. 3 days after the murder, Cleopatra announced on Instagram that Jase's girlfriend Genesis Sanchez was pregnant with his child. She posted a sonogram and called it his final gift. 7 months later, in January 2019, Gekuma Onfroy was born. Jase had created the name himself before his death and defined it as a different state or next universe of thought. What happened next is the part that split the fan base down the middle and has never fully healed. Genesis filed a petition to obtain a DNA sample from the medical examiner to legally establish Jase as Gekume's father. Cleopatra fought to block it. She went to court and actively tried to prevent the mother of her own grandchild from proving paternity. Nobody had ever publicly disputed that José was the father. Nobody ever had. A Florida judge sided with Genesis and granted the request. The DNA confirmed what the entire world already knew. Now, you have to ask yourself why a grandmother would try to block a paternity test for a grandchild she publicly celebrated on Instagram. And the answer, according to court filings that would come later, is money. Because recognizing Gekyum as José's legal heir meant the will had to be reconsidered. It meant the pie had to be redistributed. And the person who stood to lose the most from that redistribution was the person who controlled it all. Cleopatra then filed for custody of Gekyum. A guardian ad litem was appointed. A sealed report was filed. Eventually, the two women settled in early 2020 with a confidential shared custody agreement. A trust fund was created in Gekyum's name. But Corey Pak, José's half-brother through his father, claims that peace came at his expense. According to his lawsuit, Cleopatra struck a private deal with Genesis that effectively eliminated his 25%, the exact 25% that José himself had written into the will with Corey's name on it. Corey says he got nothing, despite being explicitly named as a beneficiary by his own dead brother. And that was just the first lawsuit. In June 2020, Corey Pak and his mother, Jody Kavney, sued Cleopatra and Broward County. The suit valued the estate at over $50 million and accused Cleopatra of improperly and secretly transferring the entire trust fund into her own personal accounts. Corey sought at least $11 million and was pushing for $33 million if the court found malicious intent. Cleopatra's lawyers called the suit completely without merit. They said a court had already determined Pak was entitled to nothing. They revealed that Cleopatra had voluntarily paid Corey's living expenses, bought him a car, gifted a mortgage-free home to both Corey and his mother, and covered the property taxes. The legal strategy was clear: make Corey look ungrateful. And for a while, it worked. Then in May 2021, Corey filed a second lawsuit, and the language changed everything. His attorney, Robert Stock, accused Cleopatra of creating multiple shell companies and holding companies to transfer money out of the estate. The allegation was not just about keeping money, it was about systematic financial engineering. Stock said publicly that the complaint seeks to recover assets being transferred from the probate estate by Cleopatra Bernard in order to deprive Corey of recovery. That complaint was the third legal action in Broward Circuit Court tied to José's death. It did not specify how much money had been moved or name the companies, but the accusation painted a picture that was hard to ignore. Cleopatra controlled both the estate and the Bad Vibes Forever record label. She had operational power to shift money between entities without anyone outside her circle knowing about it. Meanwhile, producer Jimmy Duvall and Stash Records filed a $2 million claim over royalties from Look at Me. Cleopatra countersued. North Broward Medical Center filed a claim for $10,417 for the emergency services on the day José was shot. Even the hospital wanted its piece. She was fighting Corey, fighting Genesis, fighting Jimmy Duvall, fighting the hospital, and running a dead robber's career that was generating more money than most living artists could dream of, all at the same time. When José died in June 2018, his net worth was estimated at $5 million. He had released 2 albums. 17 debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with 87,000 first-week units. Question Mark debuted at number 1 with 131,000 units. He had signed a $10 million deal with Empire Distribution just weeks before the murder. What Cleopatra and estate manager Solomon Sabande did with what he left behind turned a modest fortune into something that rivals living superstars. Skins dropped in December 2018, less than 6 months after the murder, and debuted at number 1 with 132,000 units. It was the first posthumous number 1 since Prince. The song Sad exploded after his death, breaking records with over 10 million streams in a single day. Bad Vibes Forever arrived in December 2019 with 25 tracks and collaborations with Lil Wayne, Blink-182, Rick Ross, and Joey Badass. It debuted at number 5 with 65,000 units. Critics were mixed. The streaming numbers did not care what critics thought. The YouTube channel grew past 39 million subscribers. Monthly Spotify listeners held steady above 30 million. The catalog surpassed 10 billion global streams. Then came the NFTs in May 2021, where Cleopatra and Solomon partnered with Yellowheart to drop 5 unreleased SoundCloud-era tracks and exclusive Revenge Tour footage. The cover art was designed by Stephen Bliss, the Grand Theft Auto illustrator, because GTA was Josse's favorite game. Individual NFTs resold for nearly $2 million on secondary markets. Proceeds went to the XXX Foundation, the nonprofit Cleopatra and Solomon created, along with organizations supporting women who experienced domestic abuse. Stack all the revenue together. Record deal advances, 4 studio albums, 10 billion plus streams, YouTube ad revenue, NFT drops, merchandise timed to anniversaries, licensing for film and television. Various estimates place cumulative estate earnings since the murder between $50 million and well over $100 million. Cleopatra holds 50% and manages every business decision. A woman who once worked as a hotel manager in Lauderhill now sits at the controls of a 9-figure music empire. In September 2018, 3 months after the murder, Ariana Onfroy sat down with British tabloid The Sun and said something that cannot be unsaid. Ariana was Josse's half-sister through his father. She stated that the murder was definitely an inside job. She said there was somebody on the inside who knew where he was going to be and the exact time he was leaving. She said it was definitely set up.
At that time in his life, he was trying to change. I don't remember him being in any type of a controversy with anyone at that time. So it was for financial gain. I don't know what other reason it could have possibly been for, what could have been more important than someone's life. It's even gone as far as that I can no longer visit my brother's cemetery. I can no longer visit his gravesite due to them trying to do anything to break me down, to keep me, fearful of them. I don't know what their tactic is or what the reason behind it for, but it's not right. It's evil. It's what did I do, to you? My brother's gone. He's gone. Like, what more can I do, than just to visit his gravesite and just to sit there and talk to him? Like, I get closer to him once I'm there.
Ariana did not name Cleopatra directly, but she made references to people keeping her from her nephew Gekume and banning her from visiting Josse's grave. In a video that circulated online, she was recorded saying about Cleopatra that his mother lies for no reason. She just lies. Cleopatra sued Ariana for defamation in December 2018, seeking $15,000 in damages. Her attorneys wrote that the statements negligently and disgracefully conveyed to readers that Cleopatra was at least partly responsible for killing her own son. The lawsuit never addressed whether Ariana had actually been banned from the gravesite or prevented from seeing Gekume. It focused entirely on the inside job accusation. Then came the Lil Uzi Vert rumors. Cleopatra was spotted at events with one of Josse's friends and fellow rapper. She gifted Uzi a personalized portrait and posted it on Instagram. The 15-year gap fueled speculation. Neither ever confirmed anything, and neither needed to. The damage to her public image was already done. She bought the $3.4 million mansion less than 5 months after burying her son. Yes, it was the same house Josse had selected for her. Yes, the deed was already in her name. But the optics of a mother moving into a mansion while her son's killers walked free on bail destroyed her reputation with a significant portion of the fan base. And yet, when she sat down on that podcast with Garrett and talked about the regret she carries, about being 100% certain she should have listened to her son when he tried to share his spiritual beliefs with her, about starting to read his books and study his interests only after he was already gone, about spending years searching for his voice on spirit box videos on YouTube because she was desperate to hear him say one more thing. There was nothing calculated about any of that. That was a mother who lost her child talking about the conversations she can never finish. She described a night when she was lying in Jose's bed and the dimmer lights in his room slowly turned all the way off by themselves, then slowly turned back on. She described feeling someone sit on the edge of her bed while she was sleeping.
8 months into a year down the line.
Is that when you started getting into numerology?
Yeah, yeah. I started like trying to figure him out and trying to see if there's a way that I can contact him. Like, it's weird. I started seeing all these spirit boxes on YouTube and people. Yeah. One of them, I actually heard his fucking voice. It sounded like his voice. I don't know if they're playing or how they did it.
Be very careful with gypsies.
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't reached out to anyone, but I just, was like listening to that type of stuff.
She described a Build-A-Bear that a friend had made with Jose's voice saying, "I love my mom to death. She is the apple of my eye," and the bear activating on its own during a massage without anyone squeezing it. She captured it on video. She said on the anniversary of his death, she experienced something weird.
But on the death day, I have it. I have the video I can show you right now on my phone. June 18th, exactly a year after he passed away, I had a double rainbow outside and it landed on my house. Usually you can go to the back of the house and see where the end is. It was on top of my house, double rainbow.
Any doubt that's him?
Of course, 100% that's him. 100%.
She said she has no doubt that is him. And she described arriving at the hospital after the shooting, pacing for hours, being told she could not see her son because his head was swollen and it would traumatize her. She said she should have made that decision herself. Then a police officer pulled her into a room and told her that Jose had expired. That was the word, expired. She said she still does not understand what he meant by expired.
I remember the officer was just so callous when he delivered. He was just like, "Oh, Jose expired today at such and such time."
Now she lives in that Parkland mansion with Gekiam, the grandson who carries a name that means next universe of thought. She manages the estate, the record label, the unreleased archive, the merchandise, the licensing deals, and every social media account with tens of millions of followers. She runs the XXX Foundation. She is the sole gatekeeper of how the world remembers XXXTentacion. She was a Jamaican immigrant who could not afford to finish high school. She worked in hotels to keep 2 boys fed. Her oldest son tattooed her name across his chest at 15, predicted his own death at 19, bought his funeral candles the night before he was killed, and left her an empire that has generated over $100 million in revenue. The 3 men who killed him will die in prison. The 4th walked free after 2 years, and the woman at the center of all of it carries both the grief and the check. Whether Cleopatra Bernard is protecting her son's legacy or profiting from it is a question that assumes those 2 things cannot exist inside the same person at the same time. Probably both. That is usually how these stories go. Cleopatra Bernard went from a hotel worker who never finished school in Jamaica to the sole controller of a $100 million empire built entirely from the music of a son who was murdered at 20 over a Louis Vuitton bag. Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell us whether you think she is a grieving mother or a businesswoman, because honestly, the answer might be that she never had the luxury of choosing just one.